Morning, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be getting started shortly. Just going to
a lot of cameras on.
That's what we like to see.
Yeah, we want it to be interactive.
Yeah, definitely a cameras on type of event.
Yeah.
So I hope you're all doing well anyway. On this, well, in Chorley, it's grey and meek, but it's dry. I always do a weather check at the top of my webinars. I don't know why. Like, you're all really interested in what's happening in Chorley. Lancashire's market town, don't you know?
I didn't know that. Did you know that there's a man who has an emu in Exton?
I did. I've not met him though.
No, I quite like to.
Yeah, I drive through Exton to get to my my daughter's nursery. I've never seen the emu though. Well, I've never seen the emu en route or anything.
Well, he walks it like a dog, from what I've seen on YouTube. Marvelous.
Oh, a couple more people coming in now. Morning, morning. Welcome if you're just joining us. Just wait for these two people to get connected and then we'll make a start. Morning if you've just joined us. Wonderful. Right, let's make a start. So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's session. I'm Sean Gibb, the Events and Marketing Manager at Pro Manchester, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this future Pro Manchester event, Maintaining Positive Communications with iMA. It's hosted by Ashley Broder, ILM Level 7 coach and iMA practitioner, Institute of Leadership and Management. Just a couple of bits of housekeeping from me, and then I'll briefly hand you over to Dwayne. So following today's session, I'll send out a post-event email, and this will contain some post-event collateral, any links or signposting for places where you can find out more or you can progress with everything you've learned today. It'll also include a link to the Pro Manchester YouTube channel where you can watch sessions back. And if you could fill in the feedback form as well, it really is helpful to improve our offerings. And I'm really interested to know what you want for future events, whether they be member events or future pro events or skills events. Just let us know. Then we can help give you what you want to get out of your membership. So yeah, just a couple of pieces of housekeeping. Please be aware the webinar is being recorded. Feel free to use the chat function, ask any questions, make any comments, observations. As Ashley's already said, it's an interactive session, so it'd be lovely if you would like to turn your cameras on. And without further ado, before I hand you over to Ashley, I'll hand you over to Dwayne Cormel, Director of Realm Recruit and Future Pro Committee member.
Hi, morning everyone. As Sean says, I sit on the Future Pro Committee, and we've been involved in organising this morning's event. Now, as a committee, we're dedicated to helping and promoting young talent within the Greater Manchester area, and we aim to help young professionals develop new business skills, build relationships and network through events like this. But our chair, Laura, she's been very perceptive in pointing out that our primary concern this year probably ought to actually be helping young professionals to maintain good health in the wake of the challenges that we're all faced with. And we think one such challenge is that working from home is seemingly the, I hate this phrase, new normal, rather than the exception to the rule. And we think that can make communication sometimes that bit more difficult. And as Ashley's going to illuminate more clearly, not everyone has the same style of communicating as the next person. And sometimes communicating with someone in a way that they're not comfortable with can unknowingly cause them stress. So against that backdrop, I'm going to first mention iMA, the tool that we're going to be talking about this morning. It's a behavioural and communication tool. I'm an iMA affiliate and I use it in all walks of my life. So I know how powerful it can be, but there's really nobody better as far as I'm concerned to introduce you to it properly than Ashley, who I'm going to hand over to now.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That was unexpectedly came to a sudden end. Thank you. Guys, seriously, this is interactive. So all those that's got like the frozen pictures, right? I know it's a picture, but you could think for a moment that it wasn't. You were just keeping very still. If you could turn your cameras on, that will be fantastically. Thank you very much indeed. That's one at a time. Monica, Steve, Hannah and Hannah. Two names, the wrong spelt the same forwards as backwards. I do like that. So a very good morning to everybody. I'm going to introduce you to iMA today. I'm going to introduce you into something that I'm pretty certain, and Dwayne has experienced this, that it will change the way you view yourself and everybody else forever from the end of this session onwards. So what we're going to do is I am going to make this interactive. So I'm going to throw out and ask you questions. And what I don't do is just ask questions and wait for an answer. I will go directly to somebody on my screen and just ask them a question so that everybody is involved in the session. So I'm going to start by asking what is without any doubt a bit of a daft question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So I'm going to Kate Thomas, I'm going to come to you first. Just tell me what that is.
It's a cap.
It is a cap. So what sort of cap?
It's a baseball cap.
It is a baseball cap. Fantastic. So there's no fooling you. That's clearly the case. So there are 16 people here, sat here in this session this morning. So what I'm going to do then is come to Leah. Leah, tell me, out of the 16 people, possibly now 17, how many people does this cap fit?
Everyone.
It does indeed fit everyone. And tell me your reasoning behind that.
We all appear to have heads as far as I can see.
Okay, so that's not an answer I've had before, but it is genuinely correct. So I can't ask. I just can't argue with that. That's fantastic. So Kelly, tell me then, if it, other than the fact we all have heads, what is the reason that this cap fits everybody who comes to this session?
I don't know if I can follow, Leah. Does it have an adjustable bit at the back?
It does, absolutely. That's exactly it. It does have an adjustable bit at the back. It is certainly a brilliant idea. You can imagine that you don't have to worry about colors, or you can only worry about colors and design. You don't have to worry about size, right? It's brilliant for caps, but rubbish for everything else. It is what is well known as a one-size-fits-all solution. And one-size-fits-all solutions are the things in which you come across pretty much every day and have done all your life, right the way through the fact you're at school, or if you did any additional education, through your business, through interactions throughout your lives, you will find there's a one-size-fits-all solution. The person who invented something assumed that if it worked for them, it worked for everybody. But we know something very important, that people communicate and see the world and behave in different ways. In fact, in 4 distinct different ways. And I'm going to explain those different ways in just a second. But what I want to say to you is there's some good news. Do you want to hear some good news? Just nod or shout, or I don't mind if you're unmuted, by the way, unless you've got a, you know, if the dog starts barking in the background or whatever, then you can remute. If you don't have a dog and there's a dog barking in the background, then that would be interesting. So you can carry on and let us know and say, I have someone else's dog. So what we're going to do is, the good news is this: you, yes, you are like 25% of the whole world's population in the way in which you communicate. 25% of the world are like you. That's a load of people. you have alignment with them, you behave like them, you communicate with them, and you rub along very, very easily. That is the very good news. The not so good news is that you're not like 75% of the whole world's population in the way in which you communicate, the way in which you behave. So you do have some commonality with 50%. You're not in total alignment like you are with that 25% that I just mentioned, but you do have commonality with 50%, which is great. Then there's 25% who, if you are very honest about it, get right up your nose in the way in which they communicate, the way in which they carry themselves, the way they go about their lives, actually annoy you. They feel exactly the same way about you. And they're the people which you most have to be able to learn to deal with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, by cartoon animated version, I'm going to explain to you iMA. And iMA looks like this. And if I can shine my light on it, see if it makes it a bit brighter. So there you go. You can see there are 4 styles which represent 25% of the world. And you can see that they are color coded, and I'll explain one by one in a moment, but let's get the overall picture of what iMA is. So the first thing is the fact that the world divides into 2 sets of people along this line. So up here are assertive people, people who are assertive. Emily Gallagher, I'm going to come to you and ask you, could you describe to me what an assertive person is?
Someone who asserts themselves to achieve things, knows what they need to do, self-starter, etc., etc.
Okay, self-starter is a really, really good good expression. What else, Nick, can we say about an assertive person? You have to unmute. You're still muted. Okay, you know what, Sandy, I'll come to you. Nick, I'll come back to you later when you've unmuted. Sandy, what else would you describe as an assertive person?
Someone who has no inhibitions in expressing their own opinions or feelings or needs.
Okay, that's certainly a significant part of it. That's excellent. Yes, so they are people. There seem to be 3 key areas for me about an assertive person. As Sandy said, somebody who's quite happy to put their opinions forward. They're also people that work at jobs that need speed and continual decision making. And the other thing is that they, on the whole, they are thinking in the future. So the opposite then are non-assertive people, and the non-assertive people are good at jobs that need close consideration and detail. They are definitely thinking in the present, and they're not going to push their thoughts and feelings and opinions forward until it is, in their opinion, it is safe to do so. So that's assertive, non-assertive. And then we divide again down here. These are left brain thinking people, what we're going to call self-contained. So they're independent thinking people who don't need people to progress in what it is they're doing. That doesn't mean they don't have relationships with people, who don't talk to people or don't like people, but they don't need people to progress. They are going to keep their closest thoughts and feelings with people who they know, like, and trust. On the other hand, are right brain thinking people, open people, and they'll talk to pretty much anybody, right? They'll tell anybody anything, but they do need people. They need recognition. They like to collaborate. They like congratulations. So 2 of those 4 things determines your iMA color. So if you are either assertive or non-assertive, either you're left brain thinking, self-contained, or right brain thinking, open. So I'll go through one by one each of the colors. So you can see there's a red, a yellow, a green, and a blue. And in iMA, we call them high red, high yellow, high green, and high blue for a specific reason. Everybody is a blend of all 4 styles, but you have one dominant style, one highest color, the one that makes you really identifiable. And for most people, they're going to be able to register and see that the way you communicate and the way you behave is patterned and programmed and predictable. So, for instance, I use the example of my height as an example. And I did a big project in schools in Greater Manchester last year, secondary schools. I think we were meant to do 50. In the end, we did 49, and we didn't entirely complete the project because of the pandemic, but nonetheless we went a long way, and we started in a year assembly. And one of the questions I did ask them is how tall I am, which is a very interesting thing. If you ever go to a school in Greater Manchester, they have no idea about heights. They shout things like 4'6" and 6'9" I got once, which should have been very, very interesting. So once we go through a whole process to try and find out how tall I am, it then finds out that I am 5'11". Stood up, I am 5'11". That's it. I didn't choose it. I didn't ask for it. I'm relatively happy with it. I don't bump my head going through doors, and I can reach most things. So I'm going to ask Nick, if you're still muted, can you unmute?
How's that?
Yes, that's it.
Good.
I can hear you. So I'm going to ask you a question now, Nick, is that if I'm fully stood up at 5'11", if I get down on my knees, how tall am I at that point?
About 4 foot.
It's not the right answer, but thank you for playing.
It will depend on the length of your back.
Ah, well, okay. So that will make me
or
what?
your legs.
That will make me what? My height.
That would make you about 7 foot tall.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I'm going to say thank you for playing. I'm going to come to Melanie. Melanie, how tall am I on my knees?
Shorter than you were stood on your feet.
Am I? Okay. Anybody disagree with that? Anyone can say that I'm not shorter on my knees. My height.
Well,
you're still the same height.
I am still the same height. That's exactly the point. My height hasn't changed. I'm just on my knees. I'm still 5'11". My clue was going to be I'm the same height on my knees as I am stood on a chair, right? It is the same thing. I'm 5'11", but whether on my knees or stood on a chair, it is an adjustment. I'm modifying, I'm adapting to be able to go and reach or bend down, whatever it is I need to do. But I still see that I am 5'11". As I said before, I didn't choose to be 5'11". I didn't choose my iMA color. None of us chose our iMA color. We just are the iMA color we are. It's the same as our height. So we can adjust, but we will come back to our highest color each time. So let's look at all 4 colors and see how to describe them, but also see if you recognize it in yourself, but much more importantly than recognizing it in yourself, recognizing it in other people. So assertive. So we have 2 assertive colors, first high red and high yellow. So let's start with the high reds. So they are self-contained and assertive, left brain thinking people. And they are the most assertive of all 4 colors. And they are go-getters, goal-driven people. And you communicate in a way of telling what you need to tell them quickly and then get out of their face. Right? They're very, very time considered. I always laugh about high reds being the fact that they've always got somewhere else to go, even if you can't entirely get them to articulate where it is they've got to be, but there's always the case is always time limited. So when you communicate with them, in whichever way you communicate with them, you get to the point very, very quickly. Over here then are also assertive people, high yellows, but they are open. And I don't think anyone has ever said of a high yellow that when they're in a room of people that they didn't notice that they were there. Okay, they are the people that make the most noise. They are very much people who wish to communicate, love to talk to people. They are ideas-driven people, and they've got thousands of ideas. And that's just how high yellows work. Then we go to the non-assertive side here. So we're back to the self-contained side here, which is high greens. So high greens are brilliant at detail, brilliant at being accurate, brilliant at tech, brilliant with numbers, stuff that needs slow consideration. But they will be accurate with you in the way in which they communicate. In return, that's their expectation of you. They need people to be accurate. I've got some really interesting stories of high greens that I've come across, which I'll come on to, where I was not accurate enough with them, and therefore they were confused by what it is I was asking them to do, which is absolutely fair enough. I didn't consider communicating with them properly. And then last but by no means least are high blues, and high blues are amiable, warm, friendly, relationship-driven people. So they are non-assertive and they are open. So they are people who are warm, willing to have a conversation with you, great at building networks, great at building long-term relationships with people. They are probably, in the world of conversation, people, although willing to have a conversation with you, they are not the initiators of a conversation. A high yellow is very much an initiator of a conversation. Now, just give me a show of hands, is before the days where we seemed to be locked down, who used to travel on a train, particularly between Manchester and London is the prime example. Give me a show of hands. Most people, which is fantastic. You ever sit on a table? Yeah, show of hands again if you sat on a table at any point. So there's you and 3 other people around that table, at which point how that interaction continued to take place was very much based on each of those persons' iMA colors as well as yours. So if you are sat there, let's say as a neutral person observing, someone comes along and immediately wants to start a conversation with everybody else on the table, they are high yellow. They need a conversation. They will allow the fact that that train journey will feel like half an hour as opposed to 2 hours and 5 minutes. Simply will shoot by. And what they're really looking for is another high yellow to have a conversation with. That's clearly where they can make that time disappear. A high red is willing to engage with you to a point. You're going to have to look for a moment to get into a conversation with them, and they will talk to you up until the point they are bored, and you'll see their eyes moving about, thinking about something else, at which point you know that that's the end of the conversation. This is where you're observing it. Remember, you're not one of those people. A high blue will wait for you to make that first move, and they'll have to just decide if they think you're worth the time and you're not going to scare them or whatever it might be. But once they know you're warm and friendly and well-meaning, they'll have a conversation. Meanwhile, a high green may well not have bothered looking at you at all in this situation. So headphones or earphones in, laptop up, they might not even notice you were there. And that's not them being rude. It's just them being high green. So you're not going to get a conversation. So when I looked at the colors, you can see is the people you get on best with are the people in your own 25%. You communicate with them very, very easily. And you look back on your life from tomorrow backwards, you'll see that the people which you bond with are more than likely to be from your own iMA color. Then we're looking at the people who you might have commonality with, so you can have a conversation, but the difficulties are the people across on the diagonal. So the chances of a high green wanting to sit all day with a high yellow is going to be a very, very painful experience with them. These are people who are quiet and considered and want to spend time possibly doing whatever it is they want to do within their own world, and these people want to talk. So therefore it is problematic. This is also problematic. Here we have people who are very, very assertive with people who are not assertive at all. And the pace in which those two people work are completely at odds with each other. So you think about anybody's workplace where there are problems where people say there's a suspicion of bullying, the chances are very high. I'm saying 80% chance that it's a high red who is frustrated in some way with a high blue, and a high blue who's not comfortable, obviously, to assert themselves to deal with the high red. They're not comfortable now, but if they knew iMA and knew how to deal with a high red, it would be very different. I'll tell you a story now about a company I worked with probably 2 years ago now. I would say last year, but this year seems to have disappeared. So there was a group of people I was doing iMA training with, and there were 2 women, one within the group, one who was head of marketing, who is high blue, and the CEO, and she is high red. The high blue had some ideas, 3 to be exact, that she wanted to get an opinion from the CEO. So she writes to the CEO by chance, right? By instinct, she writes to her in high red, a high red email that said, dear, whatever her name is, I do know what her name is, but I'm not saying it. These are my ideas, 1, 2, and 3. Whatever kind regards, whatever the sign off was, end of. Now, that was a good way of writing to a high red, but a high red did not reply to her in high blue. She replied to her in high red. Now, Dwayne knows the answer to this, so I'm not going to allow him to answer, but can anybody just stick their hand up, unmute, answer? What do you think the reply came back? Or how did it come back? Nick?
Yes, no, no.
Perfect. It was actually worse than that, Nick. It was yes. Yes, that's all it said. A one-word answer, yes. Now, I know, because I know how high reds work, that meant yes to all three. The CEO knew it meant yes to all three because she said it. And if you said, she's not going to argue, say, oh, I said yes to one, but not to 2 and 3. She said yes to all of it. She wouldn't argue that point. But if you're the high blue, you do not understand what she has said yes to. So it is not unreasonable for her to go back, which she did, and ask for clarification. Thanks very much for your email. You've said yes, but what have you said yes to? Perfectly reasonable, certainly from the perspective of a high blue, not from the high red's perspective, who's now thinking, hang on a second, why are we going through this all over again? I've already said yes. So had she replied in high blue, it would have been, she wouldn't have had that email back. It would have been quite clear communication. So you can see where communication breakdown happens. So what I suggested is that she wrote back and saying, dear such and such a person, thank you very much indeed for your email. I love your ideas. I think they're great. All three are fantastic. Good luck. And then I did something just to get their reaction in the room. I said, then you can say, if you need anything else, my door is always open. And I saw her slightly cringe by that, as I sort of could predict that was going to happen. And I said, but here's the good thing. You don't mean it, and she's not going to do it, and therefore there isn't a problem. But it's a nice way of ending an email to say, please come and talk to me. But the communication breakdown was quite clear, simply because you have to know who you're communicating to. It is also, it's not an excuse for the high red to say, oh, well, now after the iMA session, she knows I'm high red, so she'll know what that means. That, of course, is a cop-out. The point being is it's important that you communicate in the style of the other person. So iMA, spelled I-M-A, beautifully spelled with a smaller I and a capital M and a capital A. The I stands for identify. And there are two identifications. Firstly, identifying yourself. What iMA color am I? And why do you need to know that? Well, you need to know that for two reasons. Firstly, you need to celebrate your skill set, the skill set you are born to. Now, I'm now going to use on the screen my most expensive prop, as you can see, the elastic band, which I think I came with a package from the post office at some point. You know, they still use these in the post office, as you can still see them lying around in the street. This one I didn't pick up off the road. This genuinely came to me. So this is my elastic band. This is your comfort zone. Now, you would have heard, as we all have, that you must get out of your comfort zone. I disagree with that. I'm saying you should stay in it, take comfort from it, and just slowly, slowly, slowly expand it. So there's more things in your comfort zone that you're comfortable with doing, as opposed to doing something where you're jumping out. If you do something where you jump out, it's well outside of what you like doing, and you might do it and succeed, but you're not going to be doing it on a regular basis. So the idea is to clearly celebrate your skills. That's the first reason in which to know your iMA color. The second one is to become a self-actualized version of yourself. So you know, I think that's probably tautology, but you know what I mean? Self-actualized version of, here we have your high red, your high yellow, your high green, or high blue. You know your strengths and your limitations, but then also you'll know, as a self-actualized person, how you come across to other people. So therefore, you know how, both positive and negative, how you come across to other people. You might have to hold yourself back. And that's where the M&A come in. It's about modifying and adapting your communication and your behavior to be like the other person. It makes you much more understanding, much more tolerant, and so forth. It returns from the other person as well. Can you imagine if the whole world communicated in a way that they understood why people do certain things? So that's the important thing, to become self-actualized. That's it. The rest of it is about understanding the other styles of people. And you can see where breakdowns happen. You'll know where they happen. But let's celebrate people's skills. Let's look at how well they can do at certain things. So we know that everybody in the world has an iMA color. We also know that every job in the world has an iMA color. Jobs have iMA colors as well as people having iMA colors. Now, I could say that the other way around, that people have iMA colors and jobs have iMA colors, but in fact, to get this to work well and understand in the world of recruitment, employment, you have to look at the job first. It's important that you look at the job first. So I'm going to introduce you to something called the iMA Talent Finder. It's a very, very simple process. You imagine you are recruiting. You just got to ask yourselves up to 4 questions in which you'll be able to then decide the sort of person you are looking for that job. So you've got the job spec and you're looking at it and you're looking at the following things. Is it a task-driven or a relationship-driven job? There'll be 2 separate questions as it happens, but I'm doing them as well. You're thinking about, is it task-driven or is it relationship-driven? Is the person I'm looking for a natural starter that approaches risk and makes decisions quickly, or somebody who's a completer, finisher who makes their decisions slowly? So let's go to say that you decided it was a task-driven job and you wanted somebody who was a natural starter and a decision maker quickly. Taking those things into account, I'm going to ask Steve. Steve, tell me, what iMA color would I be looking at?
Steve Hilton. I'll give it Steve.
Yeah, Steve Hilton. Sorry, is that yes?
I would say red.
You would. High red. That's exactly it. So there you go. Right. That's already the iMA Talent Finder has found you the right iMA color. It also finds you between 50 and 70 words and phrases that you would put in a job advert that would appeal to high reds, and true so of all the other 3 colors as well. So the high reds would look at a job advert that would be fantastic for them. It filters out all high blues. Why does it filter out all high blues? Because you've just put in front of them a load of words of everything that they don't like. So they're not going to apply. Now, I think there'll be a little bit of spillage into high yellows and high greens, but predominantly it will be high reds. There is a iMA questionnaire for people to find out, which we'll do at the very end. iMA questionnaire to find out people's iMA color. And because it's not a psychometric test, it's a questionnaire, there's 10 questions. That's all there is. 10 questions in which there are 2 options on radio buttons, option A or option B. That is all there is, in which it takes a couple of minutes to answer, except for high greens who do take a little longer. So that is what happens. That's how you know how to find out the right iMA color for the people you might be recruiting. The other thing about this, of course, is the recruitment process. At the moment, the recruitment process looks like this. It's a one-size-fits-all solution. And each time you decide the job color of the person you're recruiting, you then have to have a recruitment process that is designed for those people. Otherwise, if you do an all anybody can apply, you'll look at CVs and you'll do references, and then worst of all, and I'll explain why it's worst of all, interviews, you're likely to get the wrong person. And you'll think, hang on a minute, we've been doing this for years, which is why so many people get the wrong people. I was reading recently that it costs £132,000 for companies to keep finding the wrong person. That's a lot of money wasted. So you can imagine you narrow down to finding the right iMA color and then have a process that's driven for them. So to give you a quick example, say you're recruiting for a job that you've decided needs close consideration and is task driven, you know you need a high green. Currently, it's open for anybody to apply. The chances are the people doing an interview are going to be high yellow or high red. So they're not necessarily going to bond with a high green in the way in which a high green will carry themselves in an interview. We know it's a high green job, but who have I not? Makan, I'm going to come to you, unless that's your surname and it's the other way around. I do apologise, as whichever way when people do that, I never know. So Azra, is that your first name?
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologise.
That's all right.
I just say what I see, as they say in catchphrase. So here I'm in a situation where I'm interviewing high greens. I'm not comfortable with that. It's a high green job. I'm basing it on interview technique. What iMA color am I going to get?
Sorry, so if I'm the red interviewer.
So yes, so you're a high red interviewer. You're finding that you're not really getting something that you want for a high green, even though we know it's a high green job, although you might not know it's a high green job. If you're basing it on people's interview technique, percentage chances, what iMA color are you going to get?
Red.
Well, you could get red because people do tend to want to recruit in their own image. But what else? What other color might you get of people who are good at talking?
Me.
Yellow.
Yeah, right. We're going to get Dwayne, right? So it's high yellows that you're going to get. And high yellows are the opposite of high greens. And I've had this with a company at the tail end of last year where they were looking for a high green but couldn't get through the interviews with high greens. They hadn't decided who they weren't going to employ. But previously they had a high yellow in the job and they let that high yellow person go. Now I said that they should have retained the high yellow in a sales role in the business. And the CEO said to me, how do I know they're good at sales? And I said, because you bought them. That was the point. But the idea is people who can sell really well are not going to be people that necessarily can do a job that a high green need to do. So the interview process is dangerous in that situation. So with jobs have colors, people have colors. I want to give you an example. I want to see is if I hold this picture up, can you see that picture? Does anyone know who that is? No? That is Captain Chesney Sullenberg, or also known as Sully. Does that ring any bells? There was a movie made about him because in 2009, he landed his aircraft on the Hudson River, took off from LaGuardia Airport. There was a bird strike, lost both his engines, and he decided that he had to land on the Hudson River. What did happen is that 155 people, including himself on board, all survived. It is an absolute brilliance. People say it's a miracle. I don't say it's a miracle. Can anybody tell me why 155 people survived that day? Have a guess.
Because he was a blue and thought the process through.
Oh, you're close but wrong color. You're close but wrong color. You're very
red.
He's definitely not high red.
No.
Green.
He's high green. Okay. And I genuinely think, and I say to anybody who's nervous of flying, once we are able to do that on a more regular basis, is if you're nervous of flying, the thing that you really want to be hoping for is that your pilot is high green. The chances are that they are, as are the people in air traffic control. They're high green jobs. They need detail, consideration, they need calm thought, and they need people to follow process. So he and his co-pilot were both high green, and they both decided this is what they were going to do. They worked out a process for doing so in absolute detail and landed on the Hudson. They could have gone to another airport. That was the point. There was a possibility of them landing back at LaGuardia, which they knew they couldn't do, or they could have gone to an airport in New Jersey. When, if any of those who've seen the film will know that the crash investigators believed that it was unnecessary for him to land on the River Hudson and could have gone to the small airport in New Jersey. Now, he said that once they added all the detail, right, he's a detail man, into the equation, it turned out that he couldn't have. So once the detail was in, every time they did the, a simulation, it crashed. And this is why. These people here are thought, considered, process, and that's why all those people are alive. As you mentioned about high blues would not still be deciding what to do, and that while they're deciding what to do, that plane would have crashed. These people would have been absolutely confident without any question whatsoever that they would have been able to land in New Jersey, so the plane would have crashed. And that leaves the high yellows who'd have probably gone, yeah, what the hell, we'll give it a go and see what happens, which I don't think is the best way of flying a plane. But here you go, which is why you don't really want high yellows flying your plane. You want high greens. So let me give you an example again of one in which I've it's a real story, but I've put an iMA frame around it, which I have no idea is true or not, right? I don't know if this is a real iMA situation, but it would have happened. So I'm going to ask, who am I going to ask? I'm going to ask the other Steve, who's just Steve Hilton and just Steve. So just Steve, I want to ask you then, if we're in the world of tablet computers, what is the #1 product and who is it made by?
Tablet computers, probably still the iPhone, is it? The Apple?
Yeah, iPad, absolutely, and by Apple. But they weren't the first people in laboratory form to have this thing developed. Does anybody, Gary, I'm going to come to you, Gary Wilson, can you tell me which tech company were way ahead of the game of all other tech companies when it came to putting a computer in what we now call tablet form?
I would assume it would be IBM.
It wasn't IBM, it was Microsoft. So here's a situation where...
But nothing Microsoft makes ever works.
Well, let me just explain to you why, right? They took so long to get something which I think is called the Surface to actually surface. It was been well behind iPad for, I don't know, 10, 12 years, however long those things have been around. These are your tech team, High Greens. They are creating and inventing, for the most part, your tech, and in this case, a tablet computer. So, Hannah Nichols, I'm going to ask you this, right? You have to go and report into your boss. And at the time at Microsoft, that was Bill Gates. What iMA color is Bill Gates?
High red.
He isn't high red. Anyone else want to have a go?
Yellow.
He's not high yellow.
He's a blue.
Green.
He's high green. Okay. Bill Gates is high green. So this is high green team go and report back to the boss. And Bill says to them, team, how we doing? And they're saying, we're getting there. We've just got a few things. We reckon there's 4, maybe 5 new features. If we get these right, they're going to be fantastic. And he asks what they are, and they go into detail, and he loves what he hears. So he sends them on their way. They high five. I don't know how high greens high five, but they go and high five, and they go off back to develop this product. At Apple, the conversation goes a bit like this. The high greens are doing exactly the same thing, and they report into their boss, who at the time was Steve Jobs. Can somebody, what I'm going to do is, Kate, I'll come back to you as we're going back from the beginning. Tell me what iMA color Steve Jobs was.
I reckon Steve Jobs might have been red.
He's high,
or yellow.
Absolutely, he was high red. Yeah, that's exactly it. So the conversation goes on, how are we going on? And I say, well, Steve, there's 4 or 5 things we need to do. And he would have said, right, we'll call that the iPad 2 and I'll get this in the shops, right? It was an immediate reaction to get things moving. The pace is completely different. At which point Apple do what Apple do. They make it look and sound beautiful and the packaging's all great. So you can see that high reds and high greens collaborated. They have commonality to make that work. But in a worldwide organization, something as multinational and as big a project as this, you're going to need high blue cooperation. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So we can see it. There's leadership. There's the tech. There's the goodwill on communication. So anybody tell me, let's go back to Leah then. Tell me what's left to do.
I knew you were going to ask me. I don't know. Could you repeat that so I could maybe try and work it out?
So it's invented. There's some leadership, a kick in the backside to get it moving. And there's cooperation across the world to get this thing out, packaged and everywhere across the globe. What's the last thing anyone needs to do, or the first thing anyone needs to do with a product? But it's the next stage for a company.
Communicate it to the world in some way, like sell
and
it?
known as
selling
it. Yeah, that's exactly it. You've got it. And that's where high yellows come in. Okay, they are going to be doing the marketing, the selling. People are going to be the early adopters because they like to have fancy things to show off to their friends. So Melanie, I'm coming to you to ask you now the most difficult question of all. The high yellows are now responsible for selling this brand new product. Out of all the iMA colors they're targeting, who are they targeting first to buy the product?
Yellows.
It is high yellows. That's brilliant. And your reasoning for saying that?
Because you just said that yellows like to have all the latest things.
Yes, they're the early adopters, but also it's easiest for them because here's a group of people who like to talk to each other, right? People who are going, you go into a room and go, hello, right? If everyone else turns away and this one woman goes, hello, you know, they're also their high yellows will then get together to have a conversation. And high yellows buy any old stuff from other high yellows, right? It really is the easiest sell in the world. One of the most things you'll hear on sales training, you'll go to Pro Manchester events, you'll hear speakers say something which I actually say is not the case. You can follow it up here. Emily, I'm going to ask you to finish my sentence if you can. You will hear people say that people buy from... Still muted.
Sorry, people.
People buy from people, right? That's not true. High yellows buy from high yellows, right? High blues, once they are convinced and safe that you are somebody nice, they will also buy from you. High reds and high greens are really not that bothered about it. High reds is about making them better, and high greens is about the detail of the product. What would happen is for a high yellow is the same, you come in with the same product at the same price, the same warranty and the same everything, post-sales, guarantees, whatever it might be, and everybody pitches to them, they're still going to buy from the high yellow because they buy from people. No one else really cares, right? That's the situation. And it's a mistake to think that they do. They also tend to be able to buy from each other if necessary. So I work with a company in Sheffield who are a software company. They have a big client in which the CEO is high green, another tech type of company. The head of sales, not unsurprisingly, is high yellow. There was a new piece of business that he couldn't get over the line because the high yellow didn't really want to spend any time with the high green. He just found it difficult. Even though they were going to benefit from it, he just couldn't bear it. So I found a high green for them to send in. Now, it wasn't a classic sale. It was, I think, a whole day's conversation from what I understand, but it's worth a six-figure sum. And they won't tell me exactly what that six-figure sum is in case I put my fees up. So I think that is an overview, because I can see my time is up, an overview of iMA. I hope that's been good fun. We're going to spend a few minutes in breakout rooms in which all I want you to do is have a 5-minute conversation and see if you can come back and say, this is who I was in a room with, this is what iMA color I think they are. I will then give you the iMA questionnaire URL to work with, and then you can, after the meeting is finished, you can go and find out your iMA color, and then by all means share it with other people, because it's important within your family, with your friends, with the people who you work with, to know their iMA colors as much as it is for them to know you.
Before we break out, sorry, can I ask a question? The scenario you gave us, what was the role of the blue?
In which? In the Microsoft one?
When you asked Leah, and the answer was yellow. Yellow is
so the idea is that that they are great at building connections and cooperating. So you want people who are helpful. So a good example is I do some work with the local McDonald's franchise, and our biggest success is they're measured on something called feel good moments, food for thoughts. And it's how much the public like their experience in the restaurant. And from one restaurant that was really not on the register nationally is now in the top 20% for customer appreciation. And the reason is the dining area team are all high yellow and high blue. People who are willing to go and say hello, come and talk to you, come and chat if necessary. If they're not getting anything from you, they'll leave you alone because they've been properly trained. But the point being is they get fantastic feedback because the right people are in the right jobs. Now, I got asked by one of the senior people there, but we know, he said to me, Ashley, we absolutely know that high reds and high greens can do this job. And I said, you're absolutely right, they can, but not every day and not all day. At some point, a high green is going to be avoiding the gaze of their customers. And at some point, a high red's going to get impatient with somebody because it's inane chatter about absolute nothing. Something in which high yellows and high blues are very comfortable doing. And it works. But the payoff also is all the people behind the scenes, all the back of house people are high green and high red. So you're getting accurate orders and you're getting them at pace. It couldn't be a better combination. McDonald's is the perfect place, by the way, for iMA, but it works everywhere else. So you can imagine if you go in and you go to the counter, you're going to encounter high blues. If you're driving round and ordering from the window, you're definitely talking to high yellows, right? People with a microphone, they love all that. They're broadcasting, and if there's a problem, they know in which to try and, you know, if they have to. The worst thing about McDonald's is when you have to go and wait because something isn't quite ready. They know how to deal with that as well. They also, just so you didn't know, this is what for me from working for McDonald's, is that from the moment you place your order and the moment you drive out, they want that to take exactly 120 seconds and no longer. So therefore, this is why they sell more coffee than Costa, by the way, because they're quicker at serving it. That's it. So Dwayne, Sean, whoever, over to you.
I think Sean's going to stick us in some breakout groups, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm ready to go. So we're just going to just go in for a few minutes. I'm going to put you in groups of 2 just to have a discussion around, well, what Ashley's been talking about today, maybe what colour you think you are. Is that right, Ashley? Yeah. Wonderful. Right, I'll do that, and then we'll meet up back here just to close things off in a few minutes. It's you and me, Dwayne, I think. Hi.
Hi, is that okay?
Yeah, it was brilliant. I've not made my... Oh, yeah, I have. It's fine. Ignore me. I was thinking I'd set the rooms for 30 seconds, but it's 30 minutes. I can just close at any time.
It's so easy to do, isn't it? It's just
yeah.
There's too many things going on for one person to deal with, I always think.
So, what colour are you?
Well, tell me.
Well, I know I have done this before, but I am very much a high blue myself.
Right. Okay.
I don't know how useful that is for an events manager. I probably should be a little bit more assertive, but
No, not at all. I think you are in a high blue job, so that's good. That's why it works. So, well, you know that I'm an open person. That's clearly the case. So, am I like you or am I like Dwayne?
Probably more like Dwayne. Does that make
me
yellow?
Yeah, I'm high yellow. Yeah, that's it. And I'm in a high yellow job. I spend 80 to 90% of my time talking, which is I feel really comfortable doing. There will be people, high greens, etc., that will find it awful. And one of the problems that occurs in big corporations is that sometimes they thrust people into roles in which they're not comfortable doing. So don't do it. They're not going to do it as well as somebody who is comfortable doing it. It doesn't make. I've heard a chair of a company at some event say he wants everybody to be able to present, to go out and present and be great public speakers. And I went to talk to him afterwards to say, that isn't possible. And he just wasn't interested. One of the reasons he wasn't interested, he'd already spent a lot of money on getting them trained. And I said, well, you can still get them trained, but not those people. Just let them do what they do really well. I'm not asking, I'm really not happy with people speaking other people's words. So although I'm good at presenting, I would never present somebody else's material. I certainly don't believe in slides. So therefore, it'd have to be something that I know about, that I can talk in a way that's interesting. That's it. But as a high yellow, I'm much more comfortable doing that than a high green would be, possibly than a high blue would do, even a high red. Although high reds would do it because they're really assertive, they've got a great deal of confidence, but they come across in a way quite often that's going to put a lot of people in the audience off, and therefore they have to moderate that. So that's the point. So you're then modifying, adapting the way in which you talk. The one thing about slides, by the way, just to let you know, that don't work is that you're up and running there. I mean, there's loads of reasons. Firstly, I don't like the fact that if you're the speaker, you're not center stage, you're off to the side pressing a button. But as you start to get going, the momentum starts to flow with this presentation, the high reds and high yellows, I think it's going too slowly for them. Meanwhile, the high greens and the high blues think it's going too fast. So that you can't win. So the best thing is not to have that, and for them just to buy into you so that you can control the pace and have a little bit for everybody. So you have to understand that you probably have to speak slightly slower than you would do when you're just talking amongst people like yourself as a high yellow performer, but that's all you have to take into account. Make it interesting, make enough details so that people are satisfied with what they're getting, and make it quick. And therefore you cover all bases fairly quickly, actually. So you don't have to spend a lot of time speaking either. But a lot of people don't know that, and they will insist that. I've seen some presentations by high greens sitting there as a high yellow. I'm desperate for it to end.
Yeah. I could certainly relate to the train analogy on those train journeys to London in the past, where as a high blue, I would be very happy to sit there with my headphones on and get something on, either do some work or get something downloaded on Netflix and watch that.
Yeah.
I would never initiate a conversation. If someone came and sat next, I would probably avoid tables, to be honest. But if someone came if someone came and sat next to me and initiated a conversation, then I would be more than happy to have the conversation. But I wouldn't initiate it myself.
Right. Okay. No. That's it. Okay. Well, that's exactly what high blues do. The other thing I'm going to end with this, I'll tell you, is so I won't spoil it now, is the walking down the street when someone comes the other way. There are two rules to this. It has to not be in a city centre, because people in city centres just can't hear, or they don't tend to communicate, and they can't be walking a dog, which I'll explain in a moment. But it's a great way of instantly identifying the iMA colour of the person who is coming towards you. Should we close off the
brilliant. Yeah. Right.
Put iMA questionnaire URL into the chat. You can probably see.
Yes. Brilliant. Right. Okay. I'm going to hit leave now, so I'll see you back in the main room.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Everyone's just going to be finishing off the conversations now and coming back into the main room. And then Ashley will just close things off with some final thoughts.
I've put the iMA questionnaire URL into the chat so that you can have a go at it afterwards. I'll just wait for everybody to go and come back. Did you give them a 60-second notice thing? Yeah, clearly you did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Brilliant. So in the chat bar, you can see ashleybaroda-ima.com. So that will be, you can go on there and have a look at the iMA questionnaire. As I said, there's only 10 questions. There's only option A or B to answer. So unless you're high green, it will only take you 2 minutes to answer. I'm going to just quickly spin round and just ask people I'm going to ask 3 people, who are they with, what iMA colour they think they are, and why. So Steve Hilton, I'll come to you. Who are you with?
I was with Dwayne, and he was a yellow because he seems to like communicating with people.
Perfect. Absolutely. So Dwayne, you were with Steve?
I was. I think Steve's also a high yellow, although I think he's not quite sure of that. But how open he was with me, and the fact that he's a founder of an apps company, so ideas driven. I think he maybe is clinging on to perhaps being high green because of this idea that he's interested in tech, but actually, right. I think he's definitely high yellow.
Okay, that's good. Hannah Nichols, tell me, who are you with?
I was with Sandy, and Sandy is a blue mostly.
Right. Okay. Sandy, what do you think Hannah's iMA colour? You're muted.
Hi. Yeah. I think Hannah is predominantly blue, but I think there's, I think with all of us, she tends towards green and yellow at times as well. So it's not pure blue.
Okay. As you get used to it, you'll see that you'll be able to identify people's dominant colour. That's right. That's the issue. So I'm going to ask one more question before I end with a way of walking down the street and finding iMA colour people. So Kelly, tell me what iMA colour I am.
Okay. You are either red or yellow.
Yeah. Okay. That's 50% so down. Which one?
Yellow.
I'm high yellow. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was a lucky guess.
80% or more of my job requires talking, and therefore that is why I have a high yellow job. So here's a thing to end. This is a game you can play just with yourself. Now, here's the rules of what you have to do. You're walking down the street. Now, it only works in a sort of suburban area, this. It can't work in a city centre because they're too noisy. I don't know if they're noisy now. I've not been in the city centre for months. I have no idea what's going on there. But you're walking down, there's someone coming along the other way. Okay, now, if they're walking a dog, this doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is that people are used to you stopping and people talking to their dogs, right? So they're used to that. But people who are just walking, who you don't know, and you say, hello, good morning, the reaction that you get will give away their iMA colour. So a high blue will be a bit like, oh, hello, good morning. And it will be a little bit apologetic, but friendly and slightly wary of the fact that you're talking to them. A high red might grunt something back to you as they're in a hurry, right? They've always got somewhere else to go. A high green will not have had that conversation, but probably would have preempted by not making sure there is no eye contact, right? So they're already walking past. And the high yellow will greet you like it's the nicest thing that's happened to them today, although it may have happened to them already, right? And that's how you'll know. It's as simple as that in an identification. And when we're back to normal and going to networking events and various bits and pieces, you will see exactly how all those things work. And networking events that are general and not controlled don't work for anybody other than high yellows, by the way, because they are incredibly in their comfort zone at that point. And therefore things need to be modified and adapted accordingly. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you for inviting me, and hopefully I will see you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ashley.
The link's not in the chat function. I can't see.
Shall I try it again? I think I might have done it well. I didn't realise I was in a breakout room. So
I was going to say, well, I'll make sure it's in the post-event email anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that there now?
Yeah.
Right, lovely.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashley. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was a brilliant session, Ashley. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you very much. Now, Kelly and I are going to have a post-meeting meeting, aren't we?
A post-meeting meeting. It sounds
Bye,
all very
everybody.
formal.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Sean.
Sean, can we stay on and Kelly and I just have a conversation unrecorded, obviously, at this point?
Yeah. Let me close that off.
Is that okay?